Hey everyone, I'm pretty sure you've started to experiment with ChatGPT, but is it really useful for your consulting job application? In this video, I'll break down how to use it effectively in each step of the application process, covering company research, networking outreach, resume and cover letter writing, online assessments, case and fit interview preparation. Since there's a lot of ground to cover, feel free to jump to the section that interests you the most. Alright, let's dive in. By the way, I've used GPT-4 to produce this video, so keep an eye on the developments in the AI-based applications. Some limitations I'll mention today may not be relevant in the coming months. Let's start with the first step, application. Let's start with researching some specific companies. Say that you're interested in healthcare consulting and you're based in Boston. Sometimes it is not always easy to find boutique firms online, so let's see if the tool is going to save us some time. Let's go ahead and type the following. I'd like to get a comprehensive list of boutique consulting firms specialized in healthcare in Boston. Alright, it's definitely a good start, but I must admit that the list wasn't super impressive. Considering that the most current data available is from September 2021, it fails to mention a couple of things. I managed to spot a couple of firms in here that were already acquired by other firms, so they have rebranded. And also there was another company here, the Stevens Group, which is not even a consulting firm. As you can see, it is definitely a great source for you to get a head start to save some time in the beginning, but I wouldn't say this is currently the most reliable source at this moment. Alright, the second step is to look into how we can finalize our networking outreach messages with the tool. Right now, it is not the best tool when it comes to building your messages from scratch because you have to input a lot of context. But when it comes to refining your existing drafts, it's an amazing tool. Let's go ahead and illustrate with an example, shall we? Let's use our suggested email template to reach out to a connection. I've customized it based on my profile. Now, ChatGPT could be most useful when it comes to fine-tuning the email. Let's say the following. Below is my email draft to reach out to a connection. Mention that I know him through John Doe, a family friend, and that I'm eager to gain experience in the aviation sector. Let's rephrase it, but keep it concise. And here below, I've just shared our Prepmatter template with a bit of a customization. Let's go ahead and see how it's going to perform. Hi Alex, I trust you're doing well. John Doe, a close family friend, recommended that I reach out to you. I'm eager to gain experience in the aviation sector and would appreciate a brief call or coffee chat to discuss opportunities at McKinsey and learn from your experience there if you're available. For context, I'm a University of Cambridge student with an internship background at Carney and currently leading a student consulting project for Rolls-Royce. Please let me know if you're able to connect. Best regards, Dennis. As you can see here, the email is very concise as well as able to point out every single thing I wanted to add. I love this tool when it comes to refining your existing content. Let's talk about the resume. You can ask ChatGPT to review your resume, but I didn't find this very useful, simply because you don't know what needs to be fixed. And without very clear instructions, it mostly fixes your grammatical errors or suggests some alternative verbs, but it won't take your resume to the next level, so you may want to consider working with your career services or a professional instead. To provide an example, I requested ChatGPT to revise a resume. I specified that each bullet point should be action-driven, the language should maintain consistency, and the outcome should be included whenever feasible. Now, let's compare the work done by ChatGPT to that of our Prepmatter's resume reviewer. You're welcome to pause this video and examine the results for yourself. However, I'll briefly outline a few limitations of the tool. As you can see throughout the document, it's not very concise. We need to do some work on this. Whereas, if you look at our version on the right, it is quite to the point overall. As another example, looking at the financial services company, the first bullet point doesn't necessarily convey to us what kind of impact that we can create out of it. Even though I asked to leave a placeholder for the impact, it cannot identify best areas to do this. Check how clear the impacts are on the right. Alright, let's look at this bullet point. Tutored international graduate students, enhancing their English language skills and teaching styles, resulting in outcome. I found this quite hard to read, and we still need to put the outcome. And check out our example, it's much clearer. Assisted 6 students in passing the language test required to work as a teaching assistant. Love it. Alright, let's also look at this bullet point. Assisted the lead researcher in authoring a paper on the quality of life for individuals living with HIV/AIDS, achieving outcome. Of course here, We needed to be more specific with the paper that we are writing, and of course, without really providing more information to ChatGPT, we cannot get that done, right? But if you look at our example, it of course specifies that. Published paper in Disease Education and Prevention with the Dean of International Studies. These are just a couple of shortages I wanted to highlight. Of course, things will get better. There's going to be many more AI-based applications. But for now, I wouldn't necessarily advise you to fully trust the software to take your CV to the next level. All right, let's move on to the cover letter. Initially, I requested the tool to compose a cover letter from scratch, using the resume that my team had previously reviewed. I gave the following directive. Based on the resume provided, can you craft a cover letter? It should be concise and error-free. The first paragraph should serve as an introduction. The second should present a value proposition. The third should explain why I want to become a consultant. And the fourth should provide a conclusion. Feel free to pause this video right now and take a look at the cover letter. As you can observe, the request is somewhat generic because we didn't supply ChatGPT with sufficient context. Now, let's work on a draft we have already available on our website. We'll compare ChatGPT's version to our team's reviewed version. Let's take a look. Again, feel free to pause this video. At first glance, it seems quite impressive, but as we get into the specifics, there's still room for improvement in ChatGPT's version. Let's go over a couple of examples. First, our team managed to prioritize one experience that's closest to consulting, but ChatGPT failed. Looking at the same paragraph, our team combined some experiences so that the skills flesh out better and that it's more concise. Whereas ChatGPT's version sounds a little bit more like the recap of the resume. So for creating a standout cover letter, consider working with career services or a professional. Let's talk about online assessments. Gaining a high-level understanding of each assessment can be helpful with the tool, but it doesn't really compare to conducting a simple Google search. I want to highlight a couple of limitations. Let's start with McKinsey's imbalance game. If you're about to take McKinsey's problem-solving game, you would realize that ChatGPT cannot display images as we speak, and it is crucial for understanding different games and how best to solve them. That's why in our Prepmatter's online assessment package, we have about 80-page document showing the displays of the games. It is crucial. And right now, the tool is unable to show us that. Next, let's talk about BCG's chatbot or online case assessment. I requested a sample case study, but it was lacking in detail and interactivity, which are both essential to excel in this assessment. That's why in our Prepmatter's course, we have 5 case studies as we speak, which are quite interactive, really helps people in solving this, whereas right now ChatGPT doesn't seem to be super helpful in this assessment. The next assessment I've looked at was BCG's and Bain's Pymetrics games. Here, ChatGPT is definitely useful to get a high-level information about what those 12 games are about, but it is definitely not sufficient. So for this, I highly suggest to do a simple Google search or use our online assessment package to be able to understand what those 12 games are all about more in detail and get some tips to be able to understand how to maximize your score. The fourth assessment I've looked at was Bain Sova and Test Gorilla. Although ChatGPT failed to create a full-length example, it is still useful for practicing a couple of questions. Here I'm sharing an example where I asked ChatGPT to give me a full-length SOVA assessment. As you can see here, it definitely does a great job in outlining what are the main key areas to look at, and also it gave me one example per dimension. Definitely is a great start. It looks into the questions of situation judgment test, numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, and the video interview. So again, it is good to get a head start. However, you definitely need to use other resources to be able to practice a full-length assessment. All right, why don't we move on? Next, case interviews. Here, I provided ChatGPT with 6 case prompts, covering digital transformation, M&A, growth strategy, investments, competitive response strategy, and public sector. Generally, it did an excellent job outlining the areas to cover. However, I found the frameworks to be quite generic, lacking a clear order, and covering too many areas. If you're using a casebook and disagree with the provided framework there, or the feedback from your case partner, you can ask ChatGPT for alternative approaches and additional ideas. Let's illustrate this with an example. We're going to use a case on our website on a competitive response strategy. That's Jim. As I look into the framework provided by ChatGPT, I would definitely swap internal and external analysis. You always want to first start with the internal. And here I see that the impact is in a way hidden. We need to find a way to flesh it out. So I would actually create a separate column called impact assessment so that it actually addresses the very first question of the case study. And then here I see SWOT analysis. It is not something we use a lot in case studies, so you can just ditch it. Strategy development next makes sense. And then after this, I see implementation plan, which might make sense, but in case studies, again, we usually focus more on the strategic lens. So again, you can get rid of this column if needed, but we should definitely keep the risks. It is not a spot-on framework, but it's also not too bad. So when it comes to coming up with more ideas, if you want to brainstorm with the tool, be my guest. But if you're trying to learn things from scratch, this is probably not the best tool to use. Next, market sizing. The market sizing aspects of ChatGPT is quite intriguing. We currently offer 10 market sizing questions in our course, and we intend to develop an entire course dedicated on this topic. But in the meantime, if you want to practice more market sizing questions, you can absolutely ask ChatGPT to generate some questions. But when it comes to the actual answers of it, I wasn't fully satisfied. Why don't we take an example to see what I mean? For example, let's ask ChatGPT to estimate the annual revenues of a mid-sized gym. When it comes to the areas to explore, of course it is useful. Here it is suggesting to look into the pricing structure, number of members, other daily revenues. That's amazing. But a couple of shortages here are follows. First of all, when it comes to market sizing, nothing beats an issue tree. So you always have to look into things that way because it is the way we typically approach market sizing, even in real life. The second shortage here I found was here it says that we need to also know the percentage of gym members that are active. But if you're working on a monthly subscription fee, this is not that important. It will be only important when it comes to the merch sales, etc. So if you're not an expert on market sizing, this could be misleading. We also need to estimate how many members this gym has. According to ChatGPT's findings, it is not very clear. So we need to go ahead once more and ask again how we can estimate the average number of gym members. Let's see what it says. Looking into 6 different answers, I would actually only pick the 4th one, which is regarding the capacity and utilization. This is exactly what we use in market sizing assessments in consulting interviews. We have to understand the peak and off-peak hours, try to find a bottleneck through perhaps the space utilization or the number of workout stations available. The other ones are not as relevant, so if you're not an expert in market sizing, you can easily get lost with ChatGPT. It is an amazing tool when it comes to brainstorming the ideas, but when it comes to actually learning how to do an estimation question, I wouldn't recommend it as we speak. Say you encounter some financial or business terminologies for the first time. The tool is great in explaining those to you. For example, in terms of financials, you want to learn more about what EBITDA is, or you want to know how to calculate for a break-even period for an investment, or you've never heard of what value chain is, or you want to learn more about what tariff rates are. For those, the tool is amazing. Go ahead and use it. But when it comes to exhibit reading, as you can imagine, the tool isn't that great because it doesn't really provide any visual outputs as we speak. And if you want to improve your quant skills, I would avoid the tool. Of course, it is great in providing a couple of examples here and there, but it doesn't really provide a comprehensive list of questions for you to solve. For this, you can use my own math drills on Prepmatter's website or use other resources for you to get better. But when it comes to brainstorming, I absolutely love the tool. It can definitely serve as an additional case partner for brainstorming ideas. For example, say that you've just completed a growth strategy case. You can use the tool to get more ideas if you're not happy with the ones that you already see in the case study book. Let's take a look at the examples that it provides. I've asked the following. The client is a construction equipment manufacturer that produces aerial work platforms. We need to brainstorm ways to grow their revenues. Can you tell me some ways to 1. Increase their market penetration, 2. Expand into new markets, and 3. New product or service offerings. Just a pro tip here. You don't want to just ask the tool to give you the ideas to grow the revenues blindly. Rather, you want to give more instructions. So that's why here I'm asking the tool to give me the ideas to increase the market penetration, ideas to expand into new markets or providing new services. Overall, I'm quite impressed with the ideas. So under the market penetration, it talks about improving the marketing efforts, offering product training, making our pricing more competitive, developing strategic partnerships, and enhancing after-sales support. All makes sense. Let's look at expanding into new markets. Geographic expansion, absolutely. Target new industries, collaborating with the government. I loved it too. The last idea, I'm not really sure. Focusing on sustainability. So here it talks about developing new products. So to me, it should be bundled under the new product or service offerings, but that's absolutely fine. And under the third section, here we have product innovation, digital integration, AR assistance, and consultation. Absolutely love the idea. So as you see here, It is a demonstration of how creative you can get by utilizing the tool. So if you know what you're asking, definitely make use of it. But if you're just asking something very generic, you will see that you may not get the results that you want. Next, we have fit interviews. I'm actually quite excited to talk about that. The tool can be a valuable resource for refining your fit interview responses before doing a final review with your peers or an interview coach. I've tested it with answers to 9 questions and overall I'm quite satisfied. Each time I received helpful feedback and ChatGPT rephrased some of my answers. Like I said, it is an amazing tool for wordsmithing. To get the most out of the tool, I suggest asking very specific questions, such as, how can I emphasize the difficulty of the task at the beginning? Are there any parts of my answer that lack substance? How can I provide a more concise response? Also, for certain questions, such as why consulting, you can simply ask ChatGPT why people choose consulting or why it's a good career option, and see if you can relate to any of those answers. This approach can help you brainstorm more effectively than reviewing an existing draft. In summary, ChatGPT is an excellent tool for brainstorming and validating your existing work at the stage, but I wouldn't recommend relying on it as your primary resource. That's what we had for today. But before you go, I have a small ask. It seems like only 8% of our current viewers are our subscribers, so it would mean a lot to us if you can go ahead and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to get more regular updates on consulting and how to practice for consulting case interviews, please turn on your notifications bell. And I'll see you in the next video.